Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Tuesday, October 14th. Derek Van Riper, Eno Saris here with you on this episode. We get you caught up on the LCS action where the Mariners have opened up a 2-0 lead, sending that series back to Seattle. So a big opportunity coming off of an off day on Tuesday for Seattle to put that series potentially out of reach. The Brewers dropped game one of the NLCS at home to the Dodgers. Blake Snell turned in an all-time pitching performance. We'll get to that here in just a few minutes. And we say goodbye to the 2025 Yankees. And to do that, Brendan Kuty will join us a little bit later on in the show. We'll talk about the Yankees offseason plans, some of the key questions they have to answer in the Bronx after yet another year, 16 in a row now, without a World Series parade. How will Yankees fans manage to get by, Eno? We will try and dig into that a little bit later on. But we begin today's show in Milwaukee. Blake Snell turned in arguably one of the most dominant pitching performances in playoff history. I don't think that's overstating it. And he did it with a really interesting game plan. Above all, his command I thought was really good. The pitch mix was curveball and changeup heavy, four-seamer usage all the way down to 27%. I did a search, looked for his entire career. We've seen 11 starts counting game one in which Blake Snell has thrown the four-seamer 35% of the time or less. 5 have been this season, and this really seemed like a prominent playoff wrinkle. We've seen pitchers do this a lot, come up with something that they haven't done often, and the Brewers hitters had no real answers for Blake Snell. He faced the minimum through 8 innings in a playoff game and held them to 1 hit. Picked off Caleb Durbin, so the Brewers had no traffic throughout this game. I just tipped my cap. I'm like, hey, what are you going to do? You got an all-time great performance from a guy that has shown up in these games before, 2-time Cy Young Award winner. And I think maybe most impressively, as you can tell with that pitch comm device, he calls his own games out there.
Yeah, I love that about him. I mean, I think some of the things that were held against him were unfairly held against him. I mean, look at this chart of his pitches. You know, when we talk about poor command, you know, people see the sprays, see the walks, they think he has poor command. But what he doesn't do, look at straight down the middle.
Yeah, there's a gap. There's a hole. There's like the heart actually is almost shaped like a heart, and it's in white because there are no pitches there. And the pitches that are close to that are mostly non-fastballs, which is what you're more likely to get away with if you're in that part of the zone.
I mean, think about some of the scatter charts we've shown you, Joe Boyle, or I could even show you Roki Sasaki's like one fastball got away from him, and the rest are all competitive. And then the other part of this, I think that was unique to this game was that, you know, his changeup command is a little unsteady. I'll give him that. But, you know, these are breaking pitches and changeups that, you know, sometimes they just, you know, catch a seam and go further than you expect. You know, they're moving more. So they it's a little bit harder to command. In that chart, what I see is just really excellent changeup command because he was really able to keep that right on the line. And that allowed him to really dial down the fastball usage, which, is something he's done before, but this was a nice version of it. I mean, he pitched really well and in command of what he was doing. And, when you look at, 60 pitches minimum in the postseason all time, he's got the 23rd best ERA, but it's really hard to separate starters and relievers. So really you got to take, Mariano Rivera has a .070 ERA in 141 postseason innings. Like that's just ridiculous. But, you got your Christy Mathewson, Walter Hoyt, Madison Bumgarner, 2.11 ERA in 102 postseason innings. These are classic postseason postseason starters. Zach Wheeler, 218. Kurt Schilling, 223. And then John Lester, 251. Blake Snell, 23rd with a 258 in the postseason. He's moving up the ranks in terms of being a legit name that we need to bring up when we talk about the best postseason starters of all time.
Yeah, the resume is impressive. I mean, it's been it's been multiple runs now too. And I think what we saw earlier in this postseason, in terms of the pitch mix, a similar approach was what Snell used in the wild card series against the Reds, 36.3% four-seamer usage there. Game 2 of the NLDS against the Phillies, 33.3% there. He did this way back in Game 6 of the 2020 ALCS with the Rays, 28% four-seamer usage. It's really impressive. And I always thought with Blake Snell's command, sometimes he'd lose command and that'd be why he'd walk guys. But I also thought part of the walk rate was always being unwilling to give in with the crushable pitch and keeping low home run rates as a result. Like, I think that's largely a part of the story for Snell as well. I think it's easy to take a high walk rate and conflate that with always bad command. And I don't think that's been the right assessment of Blake Snell throughout his career.
You know, all that said, this was the second best location plus of his career for Blake Snell. And I wonder what kind of adjustment they've made. There is, with the Dodgers, a 45% zone percentage. That's the highest of the last 3 years. But it's basically in line with his career total. So it's not like they've changed, oh, you need to be in the zone more, Blake. You know, I haven't really done that. In terms of first pitch strike percentage, he's a little bit above his career norms, but below where he was with San Francisco last year. So nothing leaps off the page in terms of approach things, but there could be something mechanical that they cleaned up while he was hurt that has led to this. But it does look like some of the best command of Blake Snell's career too. So it's both of these things, and that's why he is where he is right now. So just a really excellent start from him.
I just did a quick search over at StatCast. I was curious to know which team in Major League Baseball had the most hits during the regular season off of fastballs. All fastballs. We're counting four-seamers, two-seamers, and cutters. What team do you think led the league in hits against fastballs this season?
Well, there's a hint. We're talking about the Brewers. But if it's not the Brewers, then it's the Blue Jays.
The Blue Jays are fourth. The Brewers were first.
Yeah.
So, hey, why this wrinkle? Well, that might have had something to do with it.
That's also a thing that you see in the postseason generally. Fewer fastballs, bigger fastballs. You just hope that they keep their approach. If I was a hitting coach in the postseason, I might consider sitting slider. In fact, I think I said something like that on social media. There's been a lot of sliders.
Yeah, there has. I think adjusting an approach that's worked for you all season can be
that's the hard
really tough to do on the fly. Like, you've got an identity as a group of hitters that you've executed really well. You have to be flexible in your game planning. I don't think this was a failure to adjust. I just think Snell shoved. This was just great pitching. I don't think it was hitters unable to adjust. I think it was, they were unable to adjust, but it wasn't because they weren't trying to adjust.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he just located stuff really well. And as he said, second best location number of his career. So your eyes were not deceiving you if you thought Blake Snell looked fantastic. The Brewers managed to cobble it together again with an opener. Ashby opened with a scoreless frame. Quinn Priester in bulk managed to chew up 4 scoreless innings. And I have the double asterisk next to that because without one of the most absurd double plays I've ever seen in my entire life, an 8-6-2-2 double play. Everyone's seen the play by now. Sal Frelick pulls back a possible grand slam from Max Muncy, but his bobble hits the outfield wall before he regains it. The runners on base have no idea what's going on, although third base umpire had the call right. So had they been watching the third base umpire, they could have just known they could run, and they could have just tagged up as though he caught it. Instead, quick play by Frelick, getting the ball in. Joey Ortiz relays it home. They get a force out at home because Teoscar Hernandez was just napping at third base. And then William Contreras realized that Will Smith hadn't advanced from second, ran down to third, stepped on third. So it goes into the books as a GIDP, even though the ball never touched the ground. Jason Stark had a great column about it. Tim O'Driscoll's the official scorer for the Brewers, has scored over 2,000 games. Like
the longest GIDP in history of baseball.
By far, a record that will almost certainly stand forever. And, at that moment, that kept the game scoreless at that point. I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I've never seen that in my life. I will never see that again. And I thought that was some postseason magic that was like, are they going to steal this game because
now
of
the Brewers
that
are going to win? Yeah.
Right. Because if that sort of play goes your way, you just feel like, okay, we're gonna find something eventually, even though we're not getting anything against Snell. And if you're not watching on YouTube right now, you're missing out on what I think is maybe the greatest card we've ever put on the screen. I decided to tile Sal Frelick looking like he's in The Shining before he throws the ball in from center field. He just Frelick, I mean, like this is going to be memed forever.
He's a madman. What I love about this is I think this is a moment of that shows us a window into how well coached the Brewers are. Because, what just happened before this is that Sal Frelick made the catch but didn't make the catch, and there was not 1 second of self-pity, wallowing, oops, none of that. Ah, crap, I wish I'd made the catch. No body language suggesting that he didn't make the catch. Just an immediate laser-like focus on getting the ball in, and Contreras is a catcher, so he's a coach on the field as well. I'm not surprised that he got the double play by walking over to third base. But, the fact that they all just got this ball all the way home, and I don't want to say the Dodgers are poorly coached, but one thing that a mistake that Teoscar made was he went back to tag up again, thinking that he had to tag up after the bobble. Mm-hmm. He thought bobble catch. It doesn't matter. The rule is first contact.
Right. So you can go as soon as there's a touch. Like as soon as there's a touch, you can go.
If you're tagging and he's bobbling it, you don't have to look anymore. You can run. And so, that was just a sort of a look into. There's some possible coaching effects, some possible player smarts effects, a lot of stuff. Obviously Sal Frelick is the closest to it, so you know exactly what happened. There's people, who didn't know what happened. I don't blame Will Smith so much, who's like arriving at third base, being like, "I'm out."
Well, he sees Teoscar staying at third, and he's not really getting clear signals from third base coach. He's like, "What's going on? I got to go back." Then he's telling Tommy Edman behind him to go back because. They just didn't want to.
They're all like, "Oops, we're screwed." Now they're walking back. They know they got shot, but they're ducks in a pond. But what happened with Teoscar Hernandez was this: he didn't need to go back, and that might have been the difference because it was a really close play at home. Mm-hmm. He could have tagged there and been fine, but just a crazy play all around. And I did have that first idea of like, oh my gosh, This is gonna be the Brewers' year.
It still could be, but the job did get more difficult since they did not manage to pull out this game. I mean, again, Snell, eight scoreless, 1 hit, no walks, also, as good as you can be.
There was another really weird thing that happened. This Freddie Freeman homer. This is what it looks like on the radial chart. You can tell the dark green is like the good stuff. He's at the very edge of the dark green at the very top. This is not often a homer. It's a 45-degree launch angle. It's one of the 3 highest hit homers of all time in the postseason. And it was in the air for 6.9 seconds. I mean, this was a skyscraper of a home run and just one of the weirder home runs, but just a huge home run because that put them ahead 1-0. Just until that moment, you thought maybe 1-0 would win it. So when that happened, you're like, oh boy. And then the only sort of solace for Brewers fans was, and it turned out to be decent solace, was, well, we don't know about this Dodgers bullpen. So let's see what happens now.
Yeah, I mean, a few things to unpack in the late innings on the way into that too, right? So you have this crazy double play. You get the Freeman homer to put him up 1-0 off of Chad Patrick. Pretty unusual homer. That hang time was not nice. I am, as a fan, so sick of Freddie Freeman in October, and he does this to everybody. This is not unique to Brewers fans. This is just a guy kind of like Blake Snell. You're like, That's a really good October resume. And the Brewers managed to keep it 1-0 in this game that started by Ashby, 4 scoreless from Priester. They end up using Abner Uribe in the top of the 9th in a 1-0 game. And they get to a point, Max Muncy leads the game off, or leads the inning off with a walk. That's part of the problem, right? Uribe's command is shaky throughout. They get to the top of the order with Shohei. It's second and third in that situation. They decide to intentionally walk Shohei Ohtani because at that point in the game, you're trying to keep it 1-0. You're trying to set up a double play, try to just make sure like we don't get completely ahead of ourselves with just like worrying about the extra runs. It's just don't let one run score. Let's get to the situation. And they did it earlier in the game. They walked Shohei. They got the double play from Betts. They tried to pull that off again. Abner Uribe walks Mookie Betts, and it's 2-0. And that ends up mattering a ton because of Roki Sasaki in the 9th. Roki did not have the command, and that was a big deal. There was a really close pitch, ball 4 to Isaac Collins, that put the first runner on. That was a really, really close pitch that could have gone either way. I think it was a 3-2 pitch also. And we had a few calls like that throughout this game. I thought it was generally like pretty well umpired or across the board. But the Brewers had multiple chances to win this game with one swing, and they had their best hitters up to do it because Roki Sasaki was not electric lockdown Roki. They had to go to Treinen to get the final out against Bryce Terang, and he got Terang to chase a pitch up out of the zone, but man, he almost hit him. He almost hit him to force in a run. Like there was so many things that could have gone differently in this game. And when you think about all of that around an all-time great pitching performance, that's what makes you feel okay as a Brewers fan. Like you probably had no business being as close as you were to winning that game in the end, given how well Snell pitched for 8 innings.
Yeah, and they've gotten to Yamamoto in the past, so you feel like maybe this is an attainable game for them. I wonder if the bats will turn around. I have a Brewers stack in 6 picks, playoff 6 picks tonight. We'll see how that goes. But there was some talk. I mean, just the idea that like if he was in college, the college coach would be losing his crap right now that Terang didn't, step into that one and tie the game. But I don't know. I think that you're just there's certain things that are hardwired as a player.
Yeah, not getting hit by a ball at 90 plus is probably like in your DNA generally. Like that's going to hurt me. I'd like to play tomorrow, so I'd like to not have my kneecap broken by this pitch.
I will say that there are certain players that wear the body armor and hang over the plate that, will like just sort of let it hit the back of their elbow, the meaty part. But that wasn't this situation. This was like coming at your legs. Like you're just trying to hop out of the way. I don't know. Like you don't want to break an ankle. You know what I mean? That's that's where it was headed. So I can't blame him at all for not standing in against that. And I thought they had really good ABs against Roki Sasaki. We'll cover this a little bit more maybe with Jed Lowry tomorrow. But I think there's an open question. Even as good as Roki Sasaki's been, he's never been a guy that had great command. And what happens when you use him for 3 innings and then he comes back? What happens if you use him back to back? What is he going to look like as a reliever in terms of command? And it seemed like one of the best approaches against him was to be very patient and let him walk you or let him get into bad counts where he has to do something that might be predictable.
Yeah. I think seeing how he bounces back, if we see him again in game 2, I think there's a very good chance we will, even though I think it was something like 22 pitches that he threw in the opener. Like we know it's a short list of relievers that they trust.
Will the velo be down again? I mean, it was more 98, 99 versus 100, 102,
Right. Like that's still a big question for this series. And, the Brewers might have some of their A relievers going on back-to-backs as well, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to be a big story, I think, in game 2. And we talked about this with Dominic Cotroneo on the series preview. How effectively can the Brewers work counts against the starters? When Snell is throwing his secondaries for strikes and locating where he wants to locate, it's really hard to run up a pitch count against him. It's going to be a challenge every single time out. I mean, even though they got Yamamoto and chased him in the first inning during a meeting earlier this season, you don't look at that and go, well, that's happening again.
Yeah,
it's going to be a different game plan. I would imagine it's going to be a lot of secondary stuff from Yamamoto again. I think until the Brewers show that they can adjust to that sort of game plan in the series, that's probably what the Dodgers starters are going to do. If they can locate their secondaries really well, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah. For the season, he had a 113 location plus on the curveball, 111 on the splitter, 110 on the fastball. Yamamoto, his calling card normally is pretty good command, but we have seen it go in and out, and I don't really have a rhyme or reason for that. I don't know. The prospects report had 80 command.
Hit an 80 command?
I've never seen that before.
Fun. Awesome.
But it does. I mean, it's weird. I mean, I agree. Generally, great command. But in the games where he doesn't do well, it seems to me that command sometimes is his undoing. I mean, on the 18th of September, he faced the Giants and had 6 walks against 7 strikeouts. You know, he faced the Angels and had 5 walks against 6 strikeouts. You know, he faced the Pittsburgh Pirates and had 4 walks against 5 strikeouts. Every once in a while, he just gets a hair up his nose.
We don't have a starting lineup yet for game 2. The one thing I was thinking about with the Brewers is they decided to, against Snell, facing a lefty, they went to Isaac Collins in left. That meant Frelick had to play center field for, I think, the second time since August.
Set him up to be there for the
to even be in that. The fact he was even in that situation and made that play.
I wasn't even supposed to be here today.
Yeah, he didn't have the Dante Hicks attitude about it, so that's why they were able to make something out of that. But, you know, with Yamamoto out on the mound, I imagine we'll see Blake Perkins back in center. Churio will move back over to left. Frelick will slide back over to right, so we'll see that more frequent configuration.
There was a moment when Collins and Frelick almost collided.
And Collins made a great leaping catch at the wall. Collins has been, I would say, a high variance defender so far, where you see some really good like athletic plays.
Frelick was telling him center field has those, right? That's what he was telling him. Yeah, Frelick kind of turned away and looked pissed, but then they figured it out. But I was like, what's he saying? He's saying center field has those.
I think there've just been some moments where Collins has been overly aggressive and made some pretty huge mistakes in left field. So I think every time there was a ball hit out there was just like a pause where Brewers fans were just holding their breath, like not knowing what was going to happen. And
what's his natural position?
Well, I forget where he played. It was a minor league Rule 5 pick from the Rockies. Like, where were the Rockies playing?
Collins? Minor league Rule 5?
Minor league Rule 5.
Wow.
See, Collins in the minors in Nashville last year, 64 games in left, 18 in center, 10 at third, 20 at second. So kind of like more of like a super utility. He played 78 games at second back in 2022.
But it's like
the Brewers have used him more in the outfield.
Super utility.
Yeah, it's just like, you can do some stuff. Let's find a spot for you.
Yeah.
It's just one of those spots. If you watch him, you're like, oh, okay, we're going to sweat this out a little bit. Freddie Peralta gets the ball for the Brewers. I mean, if they could get 6 from Freddie tonight, that would be huge, even with the off day prior to game 3. I think reducing some of the looks the Dodgers get at the Brewers bullpen, very important for everybody. But man, it's a huge spot for Freddie Peralta trying to even up the series in game 2. Let's go to Toronto, where the Mariners took game 2 10-3. They jumped on top of Trey Savage early, and Savage did not have the command that we had seen in his previous dominant postseason start against the Yankees. I don't know, man. Like, is this just like part of the downside of inexperienced but electric pitchers being a huge part of your pitching plan? We've seen it over a longer timeline with Jacob Mizorowski in Milwaukee, where he breaks in and we're like, wait, why wasn't he here before? Is he a top 10 starter already? And then the final 2 months of the season happen. You're like, is he going to have a meaningful playoff role? Like, how are they going to use him? And then the playoffs happen. You're like, okay, he's electric. He's really good, but you got to be kind of careful with him. Like, it just changes every couple of outings. And I feel like because Trey Savage is even even at a shorter point in his big league career, there's still a lot we just don't know about how he's going to respond to different situations and how he's going to react when command is elusive, as it was for him in this start, especially in the first inning.
There's again a Fangraphs note here that I think that is extremely instructive when it comes to Trey Savage. 35 present command, which for a guy that was drafted last year, I think we're in present. We're not in the future.
That's not a multiple question. Years outdated command grade, right?
Yeah, 50 future. So the idea that he can grow into this is there. We saw in the entire minor leagues a 10.5% walk rate. We saw an 11% walk rate and a 93 location plus in the big leagues this year. So he's closer to the 35 than he is the 50 Trey Savage is. And then you look at the scatter chart for that game, and there's like about 15 fastballs that are above the black at the top of the zone. And then, he's kind of almost the opposite of the Blake Snell blueprint, where the fastballs were either sprayed high or down the middle. He doesn't have the kind of slider that, this is going to be obvious. Doesn't have the kind of slider that Miz has. Now, I know Miz has like a 96 mile an hour like crazy thing, but it just means that like Savage you can't really go to the splitter to like throw in the zone to get strikes. And then he's throwing this weird slider that's not as good as Miz's. So that's how you get in trouble. You have iffy command on the four seam. And that's even in my write-up of like what made Savage so good in that other start against the Yankees. I said that this approach that he's got right now requires good command, especially of both his secondaries, and that wasn't really there for him. So, also good ABs by the Mariners. We tend to fixate, I think, sometimes on the Mariners swing and miss, but they also don't chase that much. So, it goes hand in hand. Sometimes you get more swing and miss, you get more strikeouts if you're going deeper into counts. In this game, it served them well.
Yeah, they had a good game plan. They executed it well. They took advantage of mistakes. And Julio hit that 3-run homer in the first inning. That was a splitter that got a ton of plate. And he threw one, I think, 2 pitches prior to that also got a lot of plate. It got me thinking a little bit about Julio Rodriguez as a hitter. Maybe this is another question we can unpack with Jed on the Wednesday episode. But, is he a better north-south hitter than he is an east and west hitter? Because I think in my brain, when Julio's struggling, it's chasing down and away sliders. It's reaching for stuff that he can't drive, and mid away, yeah.
Yeah, I think that they kind of rock him back and forth east to west and try to get him swinging, missing on the outside part of the plate for sure.
Yeah, so that's one of those like, I wonder if he's just built to hit a guy like Savage a little better than someone that's working more inside and outside.
Shout out to Logan Gilbert. This was a gutsy performance. It was not a good one.
No, but it was enough. He gave them enough. And I think, the Jays bounced back at the bottom of the first. George Springer narrowly missed on their leadoff homer, but they got 2 across against Gilbert. They pushed this game to 3-3 at one point. So they were hanging around.
The slider was missing.
Mm-hmm.
The slider was missing for Gilbert, 221 RPM on the slider. And it's weird because the velo was mostly there, but you saw it. They talked about it in the game. Excellent broadcasters that paused to have some turkey.
Joe Davis carving a turkey while calling the game. I thought that was pretty funny.
I thought it was pretty funny. I also thought it was so funny how straight a face he was trying to keep, and like how they were acting like it was like so normal or whatever. And he's like literally giving us like keys to how to carve a turkey.
Yeah.
Anyway, they in between that, Gilbert 221 RPM down the slider, also 2 inches less break than usual. I mean, that's related to the spin. Also, like more break horizontally than usual. So just a weird slider that he had to go to because the fastball command wasn't great. And I'm most surprised in that game that not one of those sliders was taken deep. That was what I thought was going to happen. I was like, he's going to leave one of these sliders, and he just sort of danced around the heart of the plate. He had some backup sliders that worked for him. It was just enough, really. And like even in terms of the box score, just enough because it was only 3 innings. But if he'd done any less, who would have come out instead of Eduardo Bizzardo, or who would have come out after Eduardo Bizzardo? And so, they got 2 innings from Bizzardo, 2 innings from Vargas, and then 2 innings from Hancock that were a life send because they got to avoid showing more looks. So the one that was really tough was they've seen now Bizzardo pretty heavily, like that whole lineup pretty much has seen Bizzardo, and he's going to have to just be as excellent with his front door 2-seamers. I love front door 2-seamers. Bizzardo is very good at them. That's going to be a little bit of a pain point for them, but hey, they're up 2-0. And kudos again to Logan Gilbert for gutting through this one.
So I'm checking the note to be sure, but I believe this is James Smith of the Yes Network. Teams that lose the first 2 games of a best of 7 at home have come back to win just 3 times in 28 tries. That nugget came from James Smith of the Yes Network. Joe Sheehan had it in his newsletter here on Tuesday morning. It hasn't happened since the Yankees did it in the 1996 World Series.
Against the Braves.
Yeah, that broke my childhood heart. Little DVR.
That hurt me as a young person. That was the one where the Braves go to Yankee Stadium and Andrew Jones hits the youngest. He hits a homer, and he's like the youngest person to hit a homer in the World Series. He's like 19 or 20 or something, and you're just like, the world is our oyster. And then I think I don't even think it went 7.
It was 4 in a row. What's amazing, so Atlanta wins game 1 of that series 12-1. It was a Smoltz versus Pettit. They win game 2 4-0. That was Maddox versus Jimmy Key, I believe.
You're like, yeah, this guy's gonna pitch again. We're all good. Like,
yeah, we're good.
Dominant.
And then game 3 5-2. They take game 4 in 10 8-6. 1-0 in game 5. That was a Pettit Smoltz rematch.
Pettit.
And then they flipped it. They got a 3-2 win with the same pitching matchup from game 2 and game 6. I mean, it can be done. And the Jays, they're a very good team. I think the same question that I kind of kicked around a little bit, with the Brewers and maybe not having a good in-game adjustment for Snell. I still think that's just Snell being really good. Can the Jays adjust their aggressive approach at the plate, or should they keep it, given that George Kirby is the game 3 starter? And I think
he's in the zone.
He's in the zone a lot. So I don't know if you want to go in there trying to be more patient, because Kirby can fill up the zone, or at least live on the edge of the zone and throw a lot of strikes.
Yeah, I think you maintain your identity. There were moments in both these games where it felt like they were coming to come back into them. It wasn't. They're not necessarily as big a blowout. That last one was not necessarily as big a blowout as the last, as a score may suggest. I think it was a late homer that kind of put that padding in there that changed things. So, and then you have to trust that Bieber is a quality veteran starter that can put some zeros up and just go to war again.
Yeah, it's tough. Bieber versus Kirby is the game 3 pitching matchup. So yeah, obviously I think you go with the Mariners on that, especially with that being in Seattle. It looks like they're going to go Castillo in 4 and then probably Brian Wu in game 5. Does that seem like the likely pattern?
Well, the announcers were talking about it a little bit, and they mentioned that they don't think that necessarily Brian Wu will get a full start. So
maybe they could throw an opener and then throw Wu, or just go Wu for 3 or 4. I mean, there's a few different ways they can attack it. Maybe what happens in the games before that. Yeah, you could have Miller back by then at that point in the series as well. But as much of an uphill battle as climbing out of an 0-2 deficit with the series now flipped to Seattle having 3 of the next 5 at home, I think the Jays are built in a way where they can find a way to at least claw their way back in and keep things interesting in this series. Another intentional walk. It's just thinking about the 2 of Ohtani from the Brewers game, but they decided to intentionally walk Cal Raleigh in the 5th with nobody out. There was a runner already on first base. And they got Julio after that, but then Jorge Polanco hit the 3-run homer that really stretched that lead. I don't know about
Which
that.
could have been a 2-run homer, or
I mean, yeah, just the whole sequence is different. If you pitch to Cal Raleigh, really they intentionally walked him and made a pitching change. I don't know. They could have had the matchup you wanted with Raleigh, but then it's different because you got to deal with Julio
he's a switch
too.
hitter, so he can just always have the advantage.
I didn't love that given the circumstances. Like, you're going to have to pitch to great hitters in the playoffs at certain points, and I didn't love that they decided to go with the intentional walk in that particular instance. Well, now it is our pleasure to be joined by Brendan Kuty, one of our great beat writers covering the Yankees here at The Athletic. I was just thinking, it's funny the difference a week makes. 1 week ago, the Yankees beat the Jays 9-6. Season still alive. Things seemed possibly optimistic, at least as optimistic as you can be trailing in a playoff series, right? And here we are a week later, already looking at the Jays down 2-0 to Seattle in the ALCS. And we haven't even had a chance to dig through the wreckage yet. So, Brendan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's been a whirlwind. Crazy to watch what's happening right now in the ALCS. Like, the Blue Jays just felt like they steamrolled over the Yankees. And now the complete opposite's happening. I don't know what's going on here.
Baseball, right? You don't like what you see one day, go to sleep, wake up the next day, you'll see something totally different. And kind of just pulling back, I think a lot of times when a team gets eliminated in the playoffs, there's too much weight placed on what went wrong in that series relative to what went wrong in the season as a whole. Like, what do you think were the true warts of the 2025 Yankees, even if there was some overlap with those warts being a problem within the ALDS?
Man, I wrote about this the night of their final loss in the ALDS. I thought that their last game was a microcosm of all the issues that they experienced throughout 2025. You saw all their warts in that game. When Aaron Judge didn't light the place on fire, the Yankees offense didn't go. You saw a sloppy mistake from Jazz Chisholm when he made that error up the middle. You saw when Cam Schlittler let a ball go by thinking it was a double play ball, not realizing that Jazz had kind of moved himself out of position prior to the pitch, and that he wasn't going to be there for it. That ball ends up going up the middle. You watch just various things that were happening that night. The bullpen also blowing up, and that was kind of just what the season looked like, right? For a good chunk of the middle of the season, you couldn't rely on the Yankees bullpen. For a good chunk of the season, you were wondering, where's all this sloppiness coming from? And when Aaron Judge went on the IL, or when he scuffled a little bit midway through, though he's the MVP of the season for me in the American League. When he scuffled a little bit, the offense also went with him. So I just think that those are the things that really plagued the Yankees this year. You can look at, Yankees fans want to look at leadership. They want to look at Aaron Boone. They want to look at Brian Cashman. I think they're bored. I think they feel like things have gotten stale. But I don't see it necessarily with those guys. I see it more with just some of the mistakes the Yankees were prone to making throughout the year, and they're coming back to them when it mattered the most.
Yeah, it's a rough thing to try and change, though. The bullpen, that's something you can change, and the Yankees have had great bullpens. I think they were probably one of the first teams to really invest in crazy bullpens. You think of the guys who were setting up for Mariano back in the day. Like, they always had really great bullpens all the way through. I think I can get the bullpen back online. But getting defense is a tough one for an older team that works in free agency, because you want young guys at defensive core positions. And if you look at, I created this, it's just the Fangraphs depth chart for the Yankees, but I've taken off the names that are free agents. And so I think you could run back most of this team, and we'll talk about Volpe in a second, but just, you could run back most of this team. It's mostly, you're set in a lot of places. You see those missing spots in reliever. Okay, go get a reliever or two. That's fine. They may not have a lot of money if they want to just spend to the $317 they spent this year, but there's this big white spot. Center field. Tell me about center field. How do you fix center field when you need a team to have better defense going forward? You can't even really put Bellinger there as much anymore. What's your fix for center field?
Listen, this is a team that 2 years ago went with Aaron Judge every day in center field.
Right.
He didn't look terrible out there. The eye test wasn't so bad, but the numbers said, oh.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked if they bring back Cody Bellinger and he's the Yankees starting center fielder for next season. I think the Yankees have learned, I think they've learned that left field is so important there. So important that you kind of can't just throw a guy out there like you did Jason Dominguez and say, hey, sink or swim, because it can really get rough and ugly at some points. But I wouldn't be shocked if they say, all right, Cody, you're our guy for next year, and they kick the can down the road a little bit. I don't see a reunion with Trent and Grisham. Great season, 34 home runs, holy moly, right? Who saw that coming? The Yankees don't get to where they went without Trent Grisham hitting 34 home runs. But I could see Trent going for a longer-term deal with more money somewhere else.
They're not really in the Yankees don't really do that thing that the Giants did it some and some other teams do this, where they reward, guys that were important on certain runs that kind of had those pop-up seasons. They don't really do that.
No. This is cold, hard Yankees.
Yeah, right. Aaron Small doesn't get a big deal because he won 12 games for that one Yankees team.
Aaron Small, what a name. Damn. No, this is Sean Chacon. I feel like he had a little bit of a run too.
That's right. Yeah.
No, this is, some teams might be like, what have you done for me lately? The Yankees be, thank you for what you've done for me lately. And see
Right.
that. Now, would they offer him a qualifying offer? Maybe. Like, I wouldn't. No one would hate a 1-year deal for Trent, but it is a lot of money for a guy who has never done. Like, he doubled his career home run total in one season. So what I'm saying is, I wouldn't be shocked if it's Bellinger next year and then they punt a little bit, because they still got to see what they got in Spencer Jones.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they pull the plug on Jason in left and say, Cody, you look so good in left last year. Go to left, and Jason, you play center. Maybe. I mean, that's
could it be easier? I mean, that's how bad. That's how hard you think left is in Yankee Stadium, huh?
Yeah, and or at least
what makes it so hard?
There's so much ground to cover. The shadows out there get super wonky on various days. The wind at Yankee Stadium swirls like, if you've ever been in that press box, it's nuts up there. And as someone who's young and hasn't had a ton of actual playing experience, left field is hard, from the slices to the way the ball hangs. I just think you were able to put Judge in center field for that one season and a half, whenever else he did it, because the ball's coming straight onto you, right? You're reacting to where the ball's going. You got to read a little bit more in left. And I'm not sure that Jason was ready for that this year. And I think that Cody acquitted himself well there. So, yeah, I mean, I don't hate the idea. And then if that doesn't work out, you do what you do every year. You dress up another trade deadline, and maybe you got a new center fielder. I mean, Harrison Bader is still out there, right?
Right. That's the kind of Grisham-esque answer, right? You just get a guy that you have for a year or two. You get Grisham, you get Bader, you get Cedric Mullins, you get somebody that can just be a decent center fielder for a year or two.
I think the Yankees are going to trend toward defense. I think they're going to trend toward pitching, because they have so much pitching as it is. They're going to trend toward run prevention. So I wouldn't be shocked to see them go get a Bader type, make him hit seventh or eighth every day, and hope he pops a few.
Right.
I've always thought that Bader had more hitability in him than what he's shown, and maybe the Yankees.
He had a pretty good year this year, so. Right.
So and also Bader liked playing here. There was no issues when it came to that, and he's from the Bronx. So yeah, I could see them doing something like that. They're gonna figure it out. It's not going to be just some throw-in answer. It's not going to be Spencer Jones.
I think it's interesting that you pointed out how difficult it is to play left field at Yankee Stadium, because I think if you don't know that park really well, you would make an assumption that Jason Dominguez's defensive numbers as a left fielder are so bad that there's no possible way he could play center field. But given that he's so much younger than the alternatives, given that he played a lot of center field in the minors, that at least makes a lot more sense if they can't find the Bader type in free agency right away, or if they can't pull some kind of trade. I keep thinking, Brenton Doyle's a name we're going to hear all winter long for teams that need a center fielder, trying to get him out of Colorado. And I think Parker Meadows is kind of interesting too, because he had a couple injuries this year. The bat didn't look good, did not hit in the postseason, but you get that floor. You get that guy that's a great defensive center fielder. Maybe you're sort of buying low, sort of like you were when you got Grisham in the first place. And you think about Parker Meadows as a left-handed bat moving into Yankee Stadium, that could also make that bat play up a little bit too. So there's a few different ways they can attack it. The question I think a lot of people are wrestling with is, are the Yankees players for Kyle Tucker, right? I mean, Kyle Tucker is the biggest bat out there in free agency this winter. Do you see that as a realistic thing that they would go do? Because it seems like there are a few other big market teams that will be interested. So it's not going to be one of those big name players that gets a slightly smaller deal than you expect. I think Kyle Tucker's going for full freight, and I don't know if that's necessarily a big need.
And what does full freight look like the last few years? Whenever a guy goes to free agency, you're like, 300 million, 400 million.
Yeah.
Oh, we got 800 million. Oh, Vlad Guerrero, a first baseman, got $500 million. We're all looking at Kyle Tucker like 300 to 400 million, which is bananas money. What's going to stop him from getting 5? Like these teams, they can't help themselves. So are the Yankees going to be that team that can't help himself? I don't know. They kind of did it with Max Fried. 218 for Max Fried. Great pitcher right now, but injury history, 31, whatever he is. Like,
yeah,
a lot of years, a lot of money. I could be talked into them being one of those teams that does that. But geez, these deals have been kind of nuts over the last few years, even by baseball's lofty standards. So if you had to like walk the plank, are the Yankees going to get Kyle Tucker? I think they're probably not, but I think they're going to push hard for him, and I think they end up falling back on Cody Bellinger.
Yeah, I think one of the hard parts with Kyle Tucker is like if you do that, then you're trading Jason. I feel like Well,
actually, so about that, right? So say you don't bring back. Well, if you get Kyle Tucker,
then you don't bring back Cody, I guess.
Well, Cody's 25, right? 25.5 million off last year, right?
You think he's going to take it, right? Or no, he's he's not going to.
No. I'm just replacing the money.
Yeah.
Right. So you take Cody Bellinger, the 25.5 from last year, Trent, the 5 from last year, and is Tucker a $35 million a year guy?
Probably,
maybe.
Yeah. I mean, because you
30,
stretch that,
40,
if you do
something
30
like
for
that.
10, that's 300, and like that might be the way he gets the 300 is having to go like the longer term deal.
He might even say he's a 35 mil guy, right? That's only a 5 mil difference off of what you were paying Grisham and Bellinger, and then you stick Jason in center because Tucker can't play center.
Right.
He probably shouldn't even play left. But the money isn't that wild when you look at who he'd be replacing on the roster for next year. Anyway.
It doesn't help any of the defensive issues.
These guys were going to give Juan Soto all this money.
That's right.
And I'm sorry, he's a bad defender. So
yeah, he was already, I think, one of maybe the worst outfield defender last year by outs above average. So it's
and I was over here writing these stories about like how much he improved in April of 2024, how hard he worked, and it was like by the end of the year, I was like, oh my god. Now, granted, Juan Soto's a great player, got along with him well, really good dude.
Yeah,
but like not a good defender. So the Yankees will go get a guy like that if it means the offensive production's there.
Yeah, and, I think the other pain point is pretty obvious, and speaking of pain, I put this together for Anthony Volpe's shoulder, and this is his rolling exit velocities, and he looked fine. Then he had suffered a shoulder injury some point. I don't even know exactly when he suffered it, but we do know from your reporting and others that he had an all-star break cortisone shot. You look at his exit velocities, they recover right after that cortisone shot. He starts dropping off again. He gets a September cortisone shot, and lo and behold, his exit velocities come back up. But generally, the picture is just a downward trend. Is there talk of surgery? Is that something that's going to come in the next couple of weeks that we're going to hear that Anthony Volpe has surgery? And if he does have surgery, is he ready for next year? Do they think that they can get this fixed? What are you hearing about Anthony Volpe, his shoulder, his role with the team next year? I know that the fandom is sort of like done with him almost, but if he can be a competent defender like he used to be, that's still a lot of value, especially for a team that needs to get better defensively.
Yeah, don't underestimate the Yankees or any team, but particularly the Yankees, desire to find a guy who's playing a premium position, who's not getting paid that much money, and can be a plus for them. right? Even if Volpe isn't the perennial all-star, one of the best shortstops in the league, top prospect that he was heralded to be, really good defender, pops one, right? I think the Yankees can't trust him with the shoulder. They can't. He talked all year about how he was fine, yet he'd be wearing a shoulder ice pack on his shoulder after games the entire season.
Wow.
Now, this injury happened. The spark for this injury happened on May 3rd in Tampa. Went for a dive, heard a pop, didn't start the next game, or didn't play the next game, whatever it was. But as we find out later, because when it comes to the Yankees, they'd rather tell you 6 months later when things are going terrible than tell you at the moment.
He hurt himself 3 months ago.
Oh yeah. He this is actually a pre-existing labrum tear he had prior to March, and it really just started becoming really a problem now. So Anthony spent all season telling the Yankees, I can play, I'm fine. I'll do hours of rehab every day and treatment every day to get myself on the field. And that's commendable. Like, you're young. This is your shot. You grew up a Yankees fan. Like, get out on the field, right? But you can't do that again. You can't go through that again, especially if by the All-Star break and by October, you're talking about, is the shoulder bothering you on the field? Now, he's not talking about it. We're asking the questions, and the Yankees are alluding to, he's a little compromised. And now we're talking about surgery. Like, what the hell? This is your starting shortstop. So I think you can't put the ball in his court. If he needs the surgery, go get the surgery. This is probably his last chance, right? I think the Yankees will go into next season with Volpe as a starting shortstop. I don't think they're going to make it a competition thing. I don't think it's going to be like, hey, if you don't beat out Jose Caballero, you're not getting the job. But I think they're going to say, job is yours until you lose it for yourself. And getting the surgery, possibly making sure his shoulder is good, is going to be the key to whether he keeps it going here.
Yeah, I kind of feel like we're getting an update in the next 2 or 3 weeks. It's going to be, he's fine. He's going to rehab, or he had surgery and it was performed by Dr. Chris Ahmed. And here's the outlook. Like that, I could already see that PR release in my head. But
we saw the surgery went as expected. Recovery, he is 6 to 8 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks, or 3 to 5 months, or whatever. I think we still are wondering in Anaheim what exactly was fixed in Zach Neto's shoulder, but he came back from that and ended up having a really good year. And I think there's something to be said for guys that are going to play every single day, getting right physically in the offseason. And I think the injury explains, at the very least, the magnitude of the defensive drop-off from Volpe this year. The questions about his approach at the plate and whether or not there's another level for him as a hitter, maybe those are easier questions to ask because of how unbalanced the production had been prior to this year. But the fact that he became a negative defender by some metrics this year was really surprising.
Yeah, look, I'm jacked up off black coffee in my 4 Points Sheridan mug. This is like the most baseball writer thing I own.
I was going to say, you spend a lot of time in hotels, so that mug tracks.
A coworker of mine pointed it out, like, this is some crazy ball, and I can't look at it like other than a reflection of my lifestyle. It's just terrible. So a couple of thoughts here. First, a few years back, Brian McCann had the shoulder. I think it was a labrum, front shoulder in his swing. And all the talk was how much that saps your power, right? Front shoulder is the power shoulder. And for Anthony Volpe, that's the left shoulder. That's the power shoulder. That's the oomph in the ball, right? So throughout the season this year, when I'd ask, hey, do you guys think this is affecting him at the plate? Aaron Boone, Volpe, I get no. How? It's your
We
shoulder.
saw the graph.
Yeah.
And also, do you know what sucks? You know what really sucks? A shoulder injury. You guys ever hurt your shoulder? Your shoulder hurts all the damn time. Like, no matter what you do. Do you know how many times you move your shoulder throughout the day? All the time. It sucks.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine trying to swing a baseball bat as hard as you possibly can. And defensively, it's his left shoulder, right? He's not throwing with that shoulder, but you still got to move with it. You still got to
dive. You got to But
it was really his throws more than anything. Sometimes he'd get a little hiccupy on balls that were coming at him. But a lot of time it was his throws, and he doesn't have a strong arm. But if you're trying to really get your he's got good feet, right? So it's 2 steps and fires it. If you're trying to get everything into that and your shoulder hurts, Yeah, you're going to spray the ball. You're going to drop the ball. So I commend him for not making any excuse. But we kind of looked at it like, you guys think we're stupid. And then at the end of the year, we're like, we were never stupid. This is
right.
what was
we saw. What we saw was right.
It's
Come on.
North Korea. It's North Korea.
You're right. I mean, the Astros are just as bad. I mean, there's a lot of teams that are just lower body injury. At least we're not hockey. Right. Somewhere below his belt,
torso.
I don't want to know where that is.
You're right.
I have a hard time thinking that it's a good idea to play your starting shortstop 153 games with a shoulder injury that happened the first week of May. That is baffling to me.
It is. But like, look, the Yankees will tell you we can only do what the player says, right? Player says he's fine. We're going to go with it. Frankie Montas a couple of years ago, right?
I think sometimes you just got to, like you're saying, like sometimes you got to get out in front and just do what you think is right. And because the player is going to be like, yeah, I'm good. Put me out there.
Flip side, is an injured Anthony Volpe better than Oswald Peraza?
Probably. He's probably not worse.
Yeah.
So that's probably how they got there.
Maybe this is a different conversation.
That's why the math changed when Caballero was there, because a Caballero is probably a little better than an injured Volpe.
Yeah, and look, I don't think that the Yankees like brought in Caballero to push Volpe and say, hey,
no, is it just in case more?
Insurance.
More just in case, but he can push. Like this is not Peraza. This is not some random shortstop of the Yankees past, Dean Anna. Sorry, Dean. Nice guy. Catching straight. Unnecessary. Like this is not that. This is not 39-year-old Troy Tulowitzki. This is a guy who can go play for you 5 days a week, 7 days a week, whatever it is, and until you find something better. This is something that Volpe hasn't had behind him ever.
Well, no shortage of questions, which has been the case for about 16 off seasons running now in the Bronx, and we're looking forward to reading your coverage throughout the winter, Brendan.
Hey, guys, thank you for having me. Everyone, thank you for listening. Looking forward to providing more coverage. You guys are awesome.
Enjoy some time off.
Yeah. Gonna bring that mug? You packing that mug for your trip?
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. Thanks again to Brendan Kuty for dropping by to talk Yankees with us. We are going to do it again. We're back with you on Wednesday.
Thanks for listening.